Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
And who had the death in the family?
I did, unfortunately.
My humblest.
Yep.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It was my uncle. I have a very bad habit of, whenever my mom calls, going, "Who died?"
Yeah,
Just because she's very long-winded with every call. So, you know, and on that day, she actually answered your uncle. I was like, ah, crap. I got to stop doing that. So,
So, is there anything in particular you wanted to talk about today, or what's your interest?
I want to discuss you a little bit, but what my biggest interest is Lucille Ball and her career.
Right.
That is something big that I grew up on and always loved.
Yeah, we both did. I mean, I grew up watching reruns my entire childhood. That's kind of what I did. And I Love Lucy was the one, you know, that was the big one that everybody watched. So
not to
at least in my generation.
not to sound like saps, but we get started off with a fun little fact. I just made both of us cry a couple minutes ago.
Yeah,
with Desi's letter to Lucy
At
5 days after he passed, the Kennedy Center speech. Yeah. He had never heard that before, and I had heard it multiple times, and I randomly pulled it up because he was like, "What's wrong with you?"
Well, yeah, I got on here and all of a sudden I see these. Yeah, and then I was
Robert Stack. I knew Robert Stack. We had a very uncomfortable airline flight together once because of Mr. Ball.
Please.
Well, first of all, are we already in the show, or are we going to?
Oh yeah, we have no intro. We like to keep it more like a casual chat between friends. You know, there's just whatever you like. But yeah, please don't hesitate to tell us that story if you're comfortable.
It's in my book. It's no problem. In my autobiography, anyway, which is coming out next year. Mr. Stack and I. So Robert Stack is a star of The Untouchables. For those of you out there who don't know what we're talking about, and Desilu Productions produced The Untouchables, and Mr. Arnaz had a big hand in that, and in casting Robert Stack. So Robert and I were both traveling from Los Angeles to New York. And I said to him, waiting to get on the airplane, "Hey, I am who I am. I'm working on Miss Lucy book thing. It's authorized by the family. Could I have some of your time in New York when we get there?" He said, "Well, we got 5.5 hours to kill in the airplane. Why don't we do it?" Okay. Next thing I knew, the head flight attendant, I was going to say a stewardess. I'm bold. Head flight attendant pulls us, and this is when back on the wide body jets were still happening. And there was a lounge just for flight attendants, a little area they could sit and relax and put their feet up. And he arranged to have coffee and cookies delivered to us, and we could talk. I started asking questions about The Untouchables and about his appearance on the Lucy show. And from nowhere, he starts in with me, "What is it with you guys?" I'm assuming he means gay men. "What is it with you guys and dead women? Why are you always picking the bones of dead women? Why can't you write about people who are alive?" And I said, "Mr. Stack, I arranged for us to sit here. I arranged for coffee and cookies to be brought. if you didn't want to do this, all you had to do was say no. Why are you yelling at me? So I thank you for your time. I'll go and get out of your hair. He said, no, you're here already. Finish the interview, but do it quick. I sculled back to my seat afterwards. About 20 minutes go by, and I see that head flight attendant walking towards me. Now, Mr. Stack is in first class. I am not. And then behind her are other flight attendants. And I'm seeing them come towards me. I'm sitting on the aisle. I go, that's all the flight attendants there are. Did he arrange for them to put a parachute on me and throw me off the plane? What's going on here? Lead flight attendant comes to me and says, Mr. Mark, on behalf of fill in the blank airlines and Mr. Stack, we want to apologize for how you were treated. And from behind her back pulled out a magnum of champagne as a gift for me. I think Mr. Stack knew he was in the wrong and overreacted to, and I wasn't asking any personal questions. I wasn't going into anybody's personal life, just about the work. And I'm a recovering person. I'm clean and sober 37 years now almost. So I couldn't drink. I gave the bottle away. I should have kept it just as a memento, but that's my time with Robert Stack. It was uncomfortable. Wow.
Sounds like he was having a bit of a grumpy spell that day.
Well, also, not to tell tales out of school, but Mr. Stack was very happily married, and the young blonde with whom he was traveling was not his wife. So I think he was a little embarrassed. So he went on the offensive. I've also defensive.
I have gay and lesbian members of my family. I have gay and lesbian friends. I've never heard of being a thing where gay men like to talk about dead women. I've never heard that before.
There is. Look, this isn't just a gay thing. It's a show business history thing.
Right.
All of the books written about Judy Garland, all the books written about Joan Crawford and Betty Davis and the icons, the books about females sell better than books about men. There are less books about Clark Gable and James Cagney, who deserve equal treatment because they're just as wonderful, but they don't sell the same. So I think that, and it could be Mr. Stack was just the teeniest bit homophobic. I don't know. I didn't ask. We certainly didn't discuss my sex life or my personal life in any way. This is all I can do is report to you how he reacted, and that he made up for it. He apologized, not directly. He got the entire crew of the airplane to do it for him, but he arranged for it to happen.
That's a pretty solid gesture.
Yeah. No,
I would have been nicer to be personal, but that's a pretty solid gesture.
I have no anger against
pretty decent flex.
Yeah.
Well, you yourself are referred to as a walking encyclopedia of the showbiz history.
Yeah, just the other day I had Lucy on my talk show, and she publicly said, which I loved, that there is no one on the face of the earth who knows more about her parents' career than I do. And that's awfully nice to hear from the family.
Yeah, I've seen interviews that they've done where they've talked about their parents and everything, and it's nice that they hold both of them and seem to be equal esteem.
Well, you're talking about, personal lives aside, two very intelligent, enormously talented, extraordinarily ambitious people who came from completely different backgrounds. It's amazing that these two people ever found a sentence to talk about that the other one could understand, because their backgrounds are so dissimilar. And they formed a family, and they formed a show with Jess Oppenheimer, who created I Love Lucy, and was the head writer. We need to mention his name because most folks don't. And then made this studio into the biggest movie studio in the world. That's an enormous set of accomplishments for anybody. So the offspring here have a lot to admire about their parents.
Tell me a little bit about, if you can, her early life and her going to live with her step grandparents.
Oh, Miss Ball, you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't often talk about Miss Ball's personal life. That is kind of an agreement I have with the family, that I keep my interviews to professional things.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying this didn't happen. It did. I'm sure it had an impact on Miss Ball. It wasn't for very long. Dee Dee, her mother, was a good mother. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, who are watching and listening and enjoying these gentlemen, and hopefully me, Miss Ball's father died when she was very, very young, right after her brother. In fact, I think before her brother was born. In fact, her brother Fred, for whom Fred Mertz is named. And there was a period of time there where Dee Dee remarried, and Miss Ball was sent to live with his parents for a while. It wasn't very, very long, nor was the marriage, quite frankly. And eventually the home was the home of her grandpa Hunt, her mother Dee Dee, her cousin Cleo, who was raised as if she were her sister, her brother Fred, in Celeron, New York, which is on the outskirts of Jamestown. I've been to that house. I've been given a private tour of the house. And I did the most touristy thing I could think of. I got in their bathtub and lied down as if I were bathing. It was the most intimate thing I could think to do in that house, just to get it, like, feel the energy of it. Mm-hmm. But
just kind of be a part of it for a moment.
Yeah,
you know.
But if you're talking about Miss Ball's childhood, that's the center of it. That house, and Celeron, New York, and Jamestown is the big city, which is not a big city, but compared to Celeron, it's a big city.
Oh, she also had a bit of a modeling career as well.
Oh, a big one.
Under the name Diane Belmont, which I was one of those things that I had never personally known myself.
For a while, Lucille Ball is her name. I mean, that's the name. Lucille. It's funny, this name, Lucille Desiree, Desiree with an accent, Ball. Her mother is Dee Dee, is short for Desiree. And that she married a man named Desiderio. That DESI is like her whole life has those 4 letters in it, like that. She left Celeron as a teenager, went to New York, tried to go to acting school, the same one Betty Davis was in. And the acting school told Dee Dee that you're wasting your time and money here. Miss Ball went back to Celeron. There was a period of illness there. The reason for the illness, no one's ever been to exactly prove, so I don't go into that. And then she came back. And when she came back and modeled. For some time using Diane Belmont, other times using Lucille Ball. But she became a model for Hattie Carnegie, who was, in the days we're talking about, the very late 1920s and early 1930s. If you were a lady who had dough, you shot at Hattie Carnegie's. They literally made clothes to people's, changing figures. And also a lot of movie stars would come east, and Broadway stars would just go across town and get their clothes made there. Miss Ball was one of those. And now here's number 37, and this nice model is going to show, and please turn around and show them, that kind of modeling. That led to her becoming the Chesterfield cigarette poster girl in New York City for a while, which Chesterfield was a brand of cigarettes. And in those days, they had these great big billboards in New York, especially for cigarettes. I don't know why. But it was summertime in 1932, and Miss Ball was walking past the Palace Theater, the famous Palace Broadway and vaudeville and movie theater palace. And she ran into somebody and said, "Hey, why are you here? It's the middle of summer. Everybody's out touring somewhere working." And she said, "I'm out of work. I'm here looking for work." And they said, Sam Goldwyn, the movie producer, is trying to put together Goldwyn girls, like Ziegfeld had his Ziegfeld girls, for an Eddie Cantor film. And one of the girls dropped out. And one of the requirements was to be a poster girl. Aren't you the Chesterfield cigarette girl this month? She said, yeah. She got the information. This is like on a Tuesday. She left for the West Coast on Friday. And until she decided not to work, Lucille Ball was never out of work after that.
Wow.
Yeah, I grew up watching I Love Lucy, and I've always said that Lucille Ball was my first crush in life.
Good taste.
I remember being a little kid and sitting in my bedroom, and what I had was, my He-Man toys, my Thundercat toys, and my television. And we lived in an apartment on the 3rd story, and I wasn't a kid that liked to go out and play in the heat in the summertime. So when I was inside, when my mom would kick me out of the house, I had my things that I like to watch. I like to watch my cartoons, and I like to watch I Love Lucy. For whatever, I don't know what initially captured my interest about it. I just knew that it was funny. I would love to hear your opinion.
I Love Lucy, even if you named it the best sitcom that ever was, which it was, is different from almost every other sitcom it's ever been. Let's put aside all of the firsts that Jess Oppenheimer and Desi Arnaz and Carl Freund and Danny Kahn and Lucille Ball and everybody, the 100 other incredibly talented people came together. They got the best of the best to work on this project. But you watch the show. The combination of the funny, that music, that brings you into Lucy land. 4 characters who fight a lot, but never stop loving, who always forgive, and one way or another, there is a happy ending. Even if the happy ending is she doesn't get what she wants, but that ends up being happy. All of us, Geoffrey Mark included, I had a terrible childhood. For half an hour every day, starting in the 1960s when it started being rerun every day, I could lose myself in Lucy land and know that for that half hour, nothing awful was going to happen to me or to anybody I was watching. That music soothed me somehow. Elliot Daniel wrote all the original music. Wilbur Hatch conducted the orchestra and orchestrated the music that Elliot wrote. And those were 4 nice characters. Lucy, Ricky, Fred, and Ethel were nice people. Childish? Well, they had to be to make the humor. But I liked having them with me. I wanted to go visit them in that apartment.
And they were the exact opposite of what I saw on a daily basis myself.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And in my case, we lived in a 2-family house in Brooklyn, New York, with my scheming mother, my difficult father, and my aging grandparents who lived downstairs from us. He was bald and she was frustrated. I related to those relationships because those were the relationships in my life. It's like this is a version of what I see every day anyway. And I'm sure that was true for a lot of people, a lot of baby boomers who grew up with homes with their grandparents or next door to their grandparents or down the street and the dynamics back and forth. There was an emotional safety in I Love Lucy, and there still is. To this day, many, many, many moons later, every night, I Love Lucy is rerun on the Pluto channel, the Pluto platform. There's an I Love Lucy channel that plays the shows 24 hours a day. Every night I fall asleep to them because I have every episode memorized. So as I feel myself falling asleep, I just turn it off. I can play the rest of it in my head and I drift off to sleep.
I'm lucky to have every episode on DVD. So even if the internet goes down, I got the physical stuff.
Well, I have them all with the original commercials. Thanks to Lucy.
There you go.
I have a question though.
Yes, sir.
What would you say? Now, it's an extensive catalog of episodes. what would you say is your absolute 100% favorite episode of I Love
Lucy's Showbiz Swan Song. I see it was that I didn't have to think for half a second. Lucy's show. Oh, what a cute puppy's tail wagging behind you, Tristan. Lucy's Showbiz.
I'm just happy you saw his tail and not what he normally shows.
I might have admired what I saw. It's okay. Lucy's Showbiz Swan Song. I just alienated about half of your audience. Lucy's Showbiz Swan Song is, to me, the most perfectly written of the episodes. I'm not saying it has her best work in it. Vitamin and Vegemin is the best thing she ever did.
I was going to say,
oh God. Miss Ball.
Because a TV commercial is, yeah.
Miss Ball said that was the best bit she ever did. Now, her favorite episode is from the Lucy show. It's something else completely. My favorite episode, it's the episode where Ricky's putting on a barbershop quartet at the club. And Lucy wants to be in it. She sings badly. Lucy and Ethel audition at the club. And she's in a big hoop skirt and her pantaloons fall down. And then finally, she replaces George Watson as part of the quartet. And opening night, there she is under the sheet. Sweet Adeline. There isn't one misstep. There isn't one extraneous word. There isn't one piece of bad direction. Not that there was ever bad direction by Bill Asher, my dear, dear friend, but everything just fell into place perfectly. There are laughs all the way through.
One of the most beautiful moments in there where Desi's got the brush with the lather of cream on it, and Lucy goes to sing and he just shoves it in her mouth to shut her up.
And by the way, that was sour cream.
I assumed it was something edible, but yeah.
That was sour cream. They couldn't use like whipped cream because whipped cream under the hot lights would just fall apart. They didn't want to shove that stuff down, soap down her throat. Yeah. She was pregnant. They didn't want to make her ill. So it was sour cream. So that just like in the pregnancy episodes, remember she has the hot fudge sundae with the sardines. That's not really ice cream and hot fudge. That's mashed potatoes and gravy and sardines. So she wouldn't get ill. And she got ill anyway. Turns out she hated sardines. They filmed that scene. Bill Asher yelled cut and she ran off the set and threw up.
Oof.
Hey, she was pregnant and working. These things happen.
Well, and she was the first pregnant woman on TV, wasn't she?
Oh, I wish I could say yes to that. There was a very, very early sitcom. Like 17 people saw it in the 40s. It was not seen coast to coast. It was not on film. It was live in New York. So the East Coast, and that means like Schenectady, New York, Baltimore, Washington, and Philadelphia saw this. And that's it. I believe the show is called Mary Kay and Johnny. And the actress got pregnant and they didn't like do pregnancy episodes, but she was shown full body. The first coast to coast show, the first one on film. Yes, I Love Lucy was the first time they showed an expectant mother. And it was handled with such tenderness and warmth. And the only thing they couldn't do was say the word pregnant. Standards and practices at CBS. You can't use the word pregnant because to impregnate someone infers there was sex. And you couldn't infer sex on television back then. People make a big deal.
Want to not show her because she was pregnant?
Let me finish my thought and I'll answer that.
Okay.
They make a big deal that I Love Lucy, they slept in separate beds. No, not in the first season. The pregnancy episode is the first time we see the bedroom since they redecorated. Then they're in separate beds because they didn't want the audience to ask, oh, they were in bed together. She got pregnant. How did that happen? So they separated the beds out to make sure there was no specter of sexuality involved in this in any way. What was your question, sir?
What wasn't CBS executives kind of against showing her pregnant? Like they thought that it was unfit.
There were concerns across the board. There were concerns of their own. The idea to do it was Jess Oppenheimer's. They found out that Miss Ball was pregnant during the Vitamin Vegemin episode. That's the week she found out that she was going to have yet another child so soon after her daughter Lucy being born. And, what do we do? And they spent time discussing what do we do. And Jess thought, well, why don't we just have it on the show? It'll give us some good episodes. It'll be natural. And, you are having a baby and you are married. And who could find fault with that? There had to be very long discussions, not just with CBS, even more importantly with the sponsor. Because in those days, I know it's hard for people to believe today, one sponsor sponsored the entire show. There was the opening, which wasn't da 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 with the heart. That's not how it opened. It opened with a commercial for Philip Morris cigarettes, who were the sponsor. There was a cigarette commercial in the middle, 30 seconds. There was a cigarette commercial at the end. That's it. The rest of the 30 minutes was I Love Lucy. So they had to make sure Philip Morris was okay with this. So they brought in a priest, a minister, and a rabbi. And no, there's no joke following this.
I was going to ask for the punchline because
no. The punchline is they had several of the pregnancy episodes written where Lucy gets cravings, where Ricky gets jealous, where, whatever. And the three clergy people said, what could be more natural than this? Having a child is God's work. It is reflective of our religions and our spiritualities. There's nothing obscene here. There's nothing naughty here, except you can't use the word pregnant. So she was expecting, infanticipating, soon to be a mother to be, gonna have a baby. And all of that came up with it. The naming of children, the changing of minds, the not sleeping well, after the fact, hiring a maid, that kind of stuff. It's what people were dealing with. And as long as everybody signed off on it, it happened. And they did. And because Miss Ball had had a cesarean section with Lucy, her daughter Lucy Lucie, today Lucy Arnaz Luckenbill, in those days, if you had one cesarean, all your children had to be that way. Today, they don't do that anymore. So they knew for the next baby, there'd be another cesarean. The doctors counted days and weeks, and they figured out that her due date was around January 19th. So what they did was schedule it, because January 19th was a Monday. They'd filmed all the baby episodes ahead so that Lucille Ball could have time off before the baby came and after the baby came to lose weight. So it had already been filmed months before. She quit at 6 months temporarily. And they planned for the baby being born episode to happen the same day that Desi Arnaz Jr. was born. And it was such a publicity gambit. The next day was inauguration day for President Eisenhower. He wasn't on the front page. Desi Arnaz Jr. was. A few years later,
44 million people watched that instead of his inauguration.
A few years later, Desi was playing golf, Desi Sr., out here in the desert where I live, and happened to be on the same golf course as President Eisenhower, and he had little Desi with him. And the president came over and said, "Oh, so you're the little feller that threw me off the headlines when I got inaugurated." It was a very large deal. Conservatively, for the Arnazes, for CBS, for Philip Morris, between $25 and $50 million in extra profit because of all the hoopla surrounding it. Right. Now, that's a lot of money today. Back then, that was 17 fortunes.
Yeah. By the way, I like all that, and I gave the big thumbs up just because my birthday itself is January 19th. So
Happy
That puts
birthday.
a big smile on my face.
Yeah,
Mine too.
You share a birthday with.
Is it really?
No. My birthday's not been. It's the 19th, but a different month. No, Desi is.
Okay. I was just saying, what would be the odds?
No. Desi is a friend. I'm enjoying your enjoyment.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say, what are the odds that Kip is the odd one out here? You know, no.
No.
I'm always the odd one out. That's just my life.
No, but I was born as the same. I was born as the same day as Mama Cass. So
Oh, there you go.
We share a birthday.
Obviously, they were both savvy business people. How did the opportunity for Desilu Productions to basically come into existence?
Miss Ball was savvy, but really this part of this story really is Mr. Arnaz. Mr. Arnaz came from money. Mr. Arnaz came from he was practically the Prince of Cuba. His father was mayor of his town, then governor of the region. His grandfather went up San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt. He was a doctor. His uncle was the chief of police. And his other grandfather, his mother's grandfather, Acha, was one of the co-founders of the Bacardi Rum Company. So they were very well connected in Cuba. So Desi saw how big business was run, how military operations are put into place. He saw the big picture that one only gets to see if one lives that kind of a life. So when I Love Lucy hit, Desilu Productions started. The name of their boat was the Desilu because it combined their two names. Originally, Philip Morris wanted the show to be done live from New York. In those days, there was no coaxial cable. Even live television by October of 1951, it could go as far as where you guys are to Chicago an hour earlier. But that's as far as it went. So then what was called a kinescope had to happen. A movie camera, a 16 millimeter movie camera was aimed at a special monitor, recorded the show, and then that film was shipped west. And they saw the shows about 2 weeks later. But the kinescope wasn't nearly as good a quality as live television was. And they just insisted, you got to move east when you're getting here. And Desi said, no. We did this so we could stay in our house and have our family and work and come home. And Desi said, well, why can't we just film it? They said, because we know Lucille Ball is dead without an audience, which wasn't true. She did lots of comedy films, but they were talking about the radio show, My Favorite Husband, upon which I Love Lucy is built. That it was a big hit radio show because the audience was there. You could hear the laughs. Because believe it or not, they'd only just the year before invented canned laughter. It was a brand new thing. So they said no. Well, then Desi said, well, what about if we film it in front of a live audience? That idea was Desi's. It took 100 people to make that idea happen, including Jess Oppenheimer, the producer and the director of photography. All new editing process and lighting, everything had to be different. Well, because there was a difference in cost between doing it live and doing it on film, the Arnazes were going to make less money per week. So Desi negotiated, well, what if we own the shows? And CBS said, what do we care? There was no such thing as a rerun. It had not yet been invented. And he used the Desilu name as the production company. Once they started making... Once they started making
the beginning of the multi-camera shoots.
That is the beginning of it.
Yeah.
That's what they invented. How to use multiple cameras with film to record a show in front of an audience and edit it so that it's seamless. And they came up with this three-headed monster thing where you could see all the different angles at the same time and choose which ones to go to. And then Danny Kahn, the editor, later Bud Mullen, with Danny's supervision, brilliantly edited these shows together from the 3 and sometimes 4 cameras that they used. Yes, this is something Desilu Productions invented. It's not all on Desi. It was Desi's idea. And he knew how to hire the right people. He knew where to put the money, where to invest stuff. And then eventually he knew to sell I Love Lucy back to CBS so that he and his wife could buy RKO Studios. And now there was an actual Desilu studio that they owned, which became the biggest one in the entire world. How you like them Cuban apples?
It's George Lucas and ILM before George Lucas and ILM.
Yes.
Is what it is.
They pioneered what we came to know as
never been done before.
Yeah.
RKO Studios is one of the big studios of the 30s and 40s. Lucille Ball was a contract player there. So was Desi Arnaz. The film they made that introduced themselves, Too Many Girls, was made at RKO. Well, RKO kept changing heads, and its patina began to get tarnished. Eventually, Howard Hughes bought it, and he couldn't make it work either. When it came up for sale, Desi called Howard Hughes and worked out the situation, because not only was it RKO's main lot, it was also the lot where the first I Love Lucy episodes were shot. That became part of RKO. Then the Selznick Studios in Culver City had already become part of RKO, because Howard Hughes purchased these things, these 3 different lots under one umbrella, RKO. That's what Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz bought. And between their own productions and all the many productions that rented space, it was a humming place. Because you're talking about, for those of you who are old enough to remember, things like December Bride was shot there. Some of Perry Mason was shot there. Some of The Adventures of Superman was shot there. Lassie was shot there. My Three Sons was shot there. Family Affair was shot there. The Dick Van Dyke Show, the Andy Griffith Show, Make Room for Daddy, the Danny Thomas Show, Gomer Pyle. I mean, all shot there in one of these 3 places. And that, I'm not saying Miss Ball wasn't consulted or didn't have ideas, but pretty much that is all Desi Arnaz.
For someone who came from money and could be considered spoiled maybe in his early life, the man seemed to be very good at making his own money and coming up with his own ideas for this type of stuff.
Well, when you're living in a country where there is a coup, where the people in power are jailed or killed, and your family is very prominent, and they sink your yachts and set your farms on fire and burn your houses down and put your father in prison, you get the hell out of there. And Desi landed in Miami. Eventually, his father's freedom was bought. His mother and father divorced, and Desi had to earn a living. He started off by cleaning bird cages at Woolworths after school. That's the first money Desi Arnaz made. But he was extraordinarily good looking and extraordinarily talented, and went into show business and fought his way through the big bands and working for Xavier Cugat and having his own group and getting on Broadway and starring on Broadway in Too Many Girls, which led him to RKO, which led him to meet Miss Ball. And he had the wherewithal to do this because he lost everything. Desi Arnaz was not a spoiled brat. This is desperation time. This was survival time. Desi Arnaz was a survivor and used all his God-given talents to get ahead in life. How can you not respect that? He's one of my heroes.
Yeah. It sounds originally, like you had said, like he came from money, but he didn't have the advantages, it turns out.
By the time he was 16, it was over. I mean, completely over. The family borrowed money just so he could finish Catholic high school. They were living in a warehouse with rats. That's where they lived because that's all they could afford. From that to owning the biggest movie studio in the world is an enormous leap. And Mr. Arnaz was
the first
always,
TV industry millionaires.
He was always enormously grateful to this country that it gave him the opportunities to do these things. He was very aware that at that moment in American history, one could pull oneself up by one's bootstraps if one worked really, 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 really hard and had these talents to share. It was a perfect storm for him, but it could have gone in 10 other different ways, but he wouldn't allow it. He wanted his life back, and he wanted to share that with his wife.
Kip, there was something you wanted to ask?
No.
I talk a lot. Sorry, boys.
I just have thoughts. I have thoughts that are going through my head, and it just... Yeah,
whenever somebody says they talk a lot, we always have the same answer. We're Kevin Smith fans, so we're used to long-winded answers. We like them.
Yeah, we like stories. Stories.
Well,
are
I got a million of them. So, if you now, those of you who remember Jimmy Durante, who was Desi Arnaz's best friend.
Now, Desilu Studios was where they filmed Star Trek.
Yes,
the original Star Trek.
This.
And Mannix and Mission Impossible, the original.
I've seen something where Lucille Ball is called the godmother of Star Trek.
Yes.
Where did that come from? How did that become a thing? Aside from the fact that the show was filmed at the studio.
The wonderful, brilliant man who created Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, had this idea. He had already had a track record. Gene had produced other shows and written other shows before this. Desilu in the middle 1960s found itself having to sort of reinvent itself. Their sitcoms weren't doing as well. Danny Thomas's productions, like by 1967, were all gone. All those shows I talked about, the Real McCoys and everything I just mentioned, except maybe for Gomer Pyle, were gone. So the people who were running Desilu with Miss Ball decided that the way to go might be the hour-long drama. Out of those discussions came 3 shows she and they thought would work: Mannix, Mission Impossible, and Star Trek. Surprising to her, CBS turned down Star Trek because CBS had right of first refusal of any Desilu product because of her contract with the Lucy show. So they took it to NBC, the original pilot, which funded by Desilu Studios. NBC didn't like it. They didn't like the man playing the captain. They didn't like Leonard Nimoy as Spock. They didn't like that his number 1 was a female. They didn't get it. Lucille Ball said, all right, recast the lead. Let's write something a little different focus, and I'll pay for it. And she paid for an entire second pilot to be made. Had she not done that, with Bill Shatner playing Captain Kirk, and number 1 was no longer there as a female, but they enlarged rather than deleted Mr. Spock. And if you watch the episode that was the pilot, the second pilot, it was shown as part of the first season, but there's a different doctor and the costumes are a little different. They kind of buried it. Like you wouldn't hardly notice the differences, but they're there. And NBC bought it, and for 3 seasons, it ran really well. So without Miss Ball green lighting the second pilot, agreeing to pay for it, I'm not saying she had anything to do with the creative process of Star Trek, other than she did lend her music guy to supervise, not write the music, but supervise, William Wilbur Hatch, to make sure that the music was good quality, because she understood, especially in a fantasy, that the music has to also help set the stage. That much she did understand. And without her understanding and her money, this would have been a lost pilot that no one would have cared about. Instead, here we are.
Look at where Star Trek is. Look at where that theme song is today, you know?
A few $1 billion later.
Yeah. Kip, you would probably know this one, if not you as well, sir. The first one was Christopher Pike, right? That was the original captain that they went with.
Yeah.
And the number one that Mr. Mark referred to actually ended up becoming the wife of Gene Roddenberry. That was
Majel Barrett had been part of Lucille Ball's Desilu workshop. So Majel was an actress Lucille was helping to develop. Another reason for her interest in the show, because Majel was kind of like a student of hers, a protege of hers. When the original pilot was done with Uhura, the African-American actress, Nichelle Nichols, at that moment in time, Gene and Nichelle were an item.
I did not know.
Majel changed that and ended up marrying him. But she became Nurse Chapel on the series.
Yeah, she was the original number one, became Nurse Chapel.
And then in the next generation, besides being Counselor Troy's mother, she is all the voices for all the computers on the show. Even when she's not in it as an actress, her voice is in every episode as the voice of the computer.
Which is incredible and amazing.
Well, at that point, she was making a fortune from it. Why not?
Before we get back to Lucy, I have a little sidetrack just because I've always loved this story. Famously, the kiss between Shatner and Nichelle Nichols was the first interracial kiss on television.
Yes.
And I remember them wanting to change that. And it was Shatner who also fought for that. And they said, well, all right, well, let's try it our way. And he kept screwing it up.
Yes,
and
that's
screwing
true.
it up and screwed up on purpose until they got the way that they wanted it so that they could actually put that on television.
Which is not to say that Bill and Nichelle were necessarily friends or even liked each other all that much. But he understood the importance in 1968 or 69 of there being that kiss.
It was a cultural touchstone.
Nichelle was not necessarily happy on the show. She felt like a telephone operator and was going to quit. And Dr. Martin Luther King pulled her aside and said, "Don't you dare. You are showing our children that a Black woman is respected, is a professional, has power. You must stay and see this through." And she did, even though she and Bill really didn't get along all that well.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't get along with Bill Shatner.
I loved her line in his roast, and we'll go back to I Love Lucy. There was a roast of Bill Shatner, and Nichelle was there, and she talked about the kiss. And she said, "You know what? Let's redo that kiss right now." And she walked towards him as if to kiss him, turned, slapped herself on the rump, and said, "Kiss my black ass," and walked away. So there you go. That. So back to Lucille Ball and whatever else you want to ask.
Well, another great thing that I've always loved about I Love Lucy is she seemed to be like the original queen of physical comedy. And, you know, for such a beautiful woman to be doing some of the things that she did, it didn't seem out of place, but it damn sure felt unique. You know what I mean? Like she made it feel so natural, and it was so funny, the things she would do.
Perfect storm time. Miss Ball had been taking physical comedy since she was a Goldwyn girl. Anytime they needed anyone to do anything extra, Lucille Ball's was hand was up in the air. I'll do it. Hey, we need some of the mud pack. I'll do it. We need someone to. I'll do it. She learned from the best. She had Ginger Rogers' mother, Layla Rogers, teaching her at RKO. Ginger Rogers' mother had an acting studio for the younger people at RKO to bring them along and teach them really cool stuff, how to do it. So she saw that, but she worked with Eddie Cantor, and she worked with Buster Keaton and knew Buster. When she moved to MGM, Buster helped her do her comedy movies, teaching her comedy timing, how to handle props, how to take a fall, and she was open to learning as much as she could. Miss Ball always wanted her craft to get better. She didn't like resting on her laurels. And she made some very funny films before I Love Lucy. Pardon me. She made a film with Bob Hope, Fancy Pants, that was the biggest hit comedy Paramount had ever had up to that point. So let's debunk this business that Lucille Ball was the queen of the bees and that nobody knew she was funny until I Love Lucy. Hogwash. Of course they knew she was funny. She was also on a hit radio sitcom. They knew she was funny. That's why she came to television, not because her career was over, but because her radio show was such a big hit. Bill Paley at CBS wanted her, Jack Benny, and Burns and Allen to come to television. And Jack Benny and Burns and Allen did. Miss Ball took 1 year extra because she wanted to do it her way, with her husband playing her husband. And that was a big deal because CBS said, no, we can't have a mixed marriage on television. And she said, why? We're married in real life. So the comedy is Miss Ball had incredible talent. And then she was open to incredible people teaching her how to hone that talent. And there's never been anyone else like her. The closest is Carol Burnett, but they're very different performers, both extraordinarily talented and funny, but their take on comedy is different. I've talked with Carol about this. Carol likes to say things in a funny way. Lucille Ball liked to say funny things. Carol would take a pratfall to get the laugh. Lucille Ball would only do it if it followed the logic of the situation. And both are right and both are wrong. I mean, there's no like one is better than the other. They're just different people, but extraordinarily talented, who Carol also came from nothing and living in a one-room apartment in the bowels of Hollywood and became what she's become, this beloved icon. So it can be done.
We were talking about favorite episodes earlier, and you brought up the Vitamin to Vegemin episode, and people famously love the episode with the chocolates on the conveyor belt and everything. One of my favorites is Lucy stomping the grapes.
Those are the big three: Vitamin to Vegemin, the Chocolate Factory, and grape stomping. Pretty much, I've through the last 30 years have done, I don't know how many interviews and also how many Q&As in front of an audience about Miss Ball's career. And those three are always the three everybody mentions.
I feel like those are
maybe Lucy.
I feel like those are the ones that, I feel like those are the ones that when you see a clip show or you see a short documentary on her career, those are the three episodes that they always pull from.
I think because those three probably, and I'm not talking about the whole episode, I'm talking about physical comedy in the moment, just the physical comedy part of the episode, are the best. They're the ones, they are the most recognizable because you look at them and instantly you know the episode, and you know why you're laughing at it. And let's also please mention, because certainly in the Chocolate Factory, there's also Miss Vance, who was a brilliant comedy actress on her own. And Miss Ball holds a bar up that I don't know anyone else has ever really hit in sitcom land. And I've known and been very close friends with a lot of those ladies in sitcom land. I don't know that any of them would claim that they do it as well as Miss Ball did
it. I had a thought there in the middle of that. And I totally lost it because I was just enjoying and getting into what you were saying. That was my other thought. There was another thing. I've always loved this. They have a Christmas special that I used to watch every year, just along the same way that people watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And I've always loved the fact that back then in the Christmas special, they don't put up their tree until Christmas night after little Ricky goes to bed. It was always the weirdest thing to me in the world.
Well, let's talk about that for 1 second. First of all, it was not a special. Originally, that show was another episode of I Love Lucy.
Oh, really? Okay.
They invented what is called the clip show.
Me.
No. Let me, because it became a special. Let me explain it to you. They wanted to save some money. They wanted to do one without the live audience, and like they could shoot it in an hour and save some money that week. Well, we could do a Christmas show, and basically what it is clips from Lucy becoming pregnant and having the baby, and because the show is about little Ricky's Christmas. In some cultures in this country, used to be, depending on what your religion was and what part of the world your people came from, people put up Christmas trees the night before to surprise the children the next morning. Look what happened while you were asleep. Today, people put Christmas trees up at Thanksgiving. Stuff has changed. But traditionally, it was not uncommon for this to happen. So the episode happened, the episode aired. I Love Lucy ends at the end of that season. The Arnazes do 3 seasons of hour-long versions of I Love Lucy, called the Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz Show. And then the whole thing ends in April of 1960. That is when the show started getting rerun on CBS Monday through Friday in the mornings. And then after 1966, in syndication all over the world. And it was decided that no one wanted to watch a clip show, and no one wanted to watch a Christmas show in July or August or April or whatever. So that episode was pulled out. There were actually 180 episodes of the show made. 179 of them went into reruns. Now, I asked Miss Ball about that show, and she said she didn't like watching it. There was an eeriness of that show. Maybe she remembered, maybe it wasn't a good week for her, or that there wasn't really a live audience. They used canned laughter, but she found the show to be eerie and didn't like watching it. So they didn't rerun it ever. Eventually, CBS got the idea, well, if we get some introductions by Lucy Arnaz and we can pad this out to an hour and have an hour-long special, it's already, we already own it. We don't have to produce anything. We don't have to do anything with it except pay Miss Arnaz for introducing it and talking about it. And so that's what they've done. That they've turned that in, and then they colorized it to make it even more, have a contemporary feel. So it wasn't a special of itself. It just was one episode put aside. And I find it to be kind of sweet, looking back on some of the more sentimental moments of the show.
Did Desilu Studios Productions, did they invent the rerun? Is that?
Yes. Well, again, Mr. Arnaz and Jess Oppenheimer. Let's not forget his name, please. When they found out that she was going to have a baby, here was the conundrum. They had so many episodes left to do of that season. And they were going to take the summer off and come back in the fall, which is what they did back then. I mean, the show would go off the air completely in those days on television, and there'd be a summer series that would hold the time spot open, and you'd see them in the fall and you'd look forward to seeing them again. They didn't have time. What they decided to do was shoot ahead. So I think the Arnazes and the rest, everybody had like 2 weeks off, and they came right back and started the second season almost immediately to shoot enough episodes of her not showing to fill much of the second season. They already knew Lucy Ricardo had to have her baby January 19th. So they, you count backwards and figure out how many episodes do we need and how many episodes do we want to talk about her actually being pregnant. They decided on a certain number of episodes would be pregnancy episodes. They would start in November, they would end in January. But from September through November, they had to have non-pregnancy episodes. There just wasn't enough time to shoot enough stuff. They did 2 things. Brilliant. One was to have Desi and Vivian and Bill shoot wraparounds around, hey, remember when vitamin and vegemin? And they'd show the episode. The other thing they did was so that that wouldn't stick out. They did wraparounds for new shows. Hey, remember when Lucy kept changing her mind, even though it was a new episode? So that for a few weeks, you had these remember when things up front, so that one wouldn't just stick out. So they interspersed pregnancy, non-pregnancy remember whens together. And then after the baby was born, Miss Ball didn't come back until March to give her time to lose the pregnancy weight. And they had to fill in then too. So it was a combination of shows shot ahead, hiding her belly, shows shot ahead where she's pregnant, shows shot ahead where they have these wraparounds. And then finally, Miss Ball comes back to the show where they bring little Ricky home, and Mrs. Trumbull is upset because his crying is upsetting her. And they brought in Mrs. Trumbull to give a place for little Ricky to be when they wanted to get him out of the way. Oh, Mrs. Trumbull's watching him. And then you didn't talk about little Ricky for the rest of the episode.
Right. That's actually pretty brilliant. I mean,
yeah, well,
that
Tristan and Kim,
these
people, this 100 people I'm talking about, there's no dullards in the bunch. These are all creative, brilliant, talented people, each and every one of them. Hair, makeup, costuming, set design, lighting, everything involved, music. All of the musicians of a Desi Arnaz orchestra are wonderful. Desi Arnaz and Jess Oppenheimer together brought together literally some of the most talented people in Hollywood to work on this show. And that brilliance of talent, not just the four people, it shows. It's why this show is such high quality.
One of the things that I recently learned while I was preparing for this one, later on in life, Lucy became a teacher. She taught a class in film and television aesthetics in California.
Well, more than California, twice. First time teaching was part of Desilu. When they were doing the hour-long specials, and Miss Ball wasn't working every week because only 13 of them were made in a matter of 3 seasons. She had extra time. She wanted to give back to young people the way Lila Rogers had given to her. So in the same space, she did a Desilu Playhouse where young people could be nurtured and mentored, and Ken Berry came out of that. My dear friend Carol Cook came out of that. Majel Barrett came out. A whole bunch of wonderful people who worked came out of that workshop. Then later, when she gave up Here's Lucy and again began doing specials, and she had time on her hands, so she began to go to universities and colleges and she would do a semester where she wouldn't actually teach, like she had no syllabus, but she let talented young people ask her questions and learn from the answers to the questions. And if I can break my own arm patting myself on the back, she did one of these at the Museum of Broadcasting in New York, which later became the Bill Paley Center. And I was there for it. You'd be surprised how kind of silly some of those questions were and how kind of moronic some of the people were asking the questions. And I could see that Miss Ball was getting a little fed up with nonsense. And happily and luckily, they had to be the microphone. And I said to her, Miss Ball, your good friend Jack Benny said the reason people tune into sitcoms is because the lead actors do shtick, not every week, but you tune in every week to see which piece of shtick might be done this time. And I said, you had 2 of them and you gave them up. One was the crying Jag, and one was what we all called the spider, her going, ugh. Why did you give them up? And she stared at me. And she said, young man, that is the best question about my comedy anyone has ever asked me. And for the next half hour, she answered question after question for me. And a dear friend of mine I brought along, I paid for his ticket. And happily, he'd been a secretary of the Navy. And he took down every word she said in longhand and shorthand. And those interviews were the beginning of the Lucy book. So hooray for me.
We just have a few more questions before we do the end of the podcast questionnaire and let you go. But there's something that this clip popped up a few years ago, and I've been very interested in it for a long time. And maybe you could tell me some more insight about it, possibly. In 1978, there was a show called America Alive.
Yes.
And they had an episode with Lucille Ball on there.
Yes.
And she seemed to have a problem with the host, David Sheehan, and spent half her time telling him to take his hands off the women who were asking questions. Like, was this guy problematic or what was his deal?
America Alive was co-hosted by David Sheehan and Jack Linkletter, Art Linkletter's son. That's how they got Lucy, because she and Art were good buddies. It was really the first time she'd done it with Phil Donahue for MAME, to publicize MAME, where she let the audience ask her questions. But this was the first time she was doing it, on a network show. And if you watch the clips, David got a little handsy but only the females. And Miss Ball could be your best friend. If you were talented and earnest and worked hard, she was in your corner. She was in mine. God bless. But
she was not having it with this guy, though.
she did not suffer fools gladly. Let's put it that way. And she said what was on her mind, whether it was tactful or not. It wasn't a full hour of that. The clips you see are just a few minutes of a much, much longer show. I have the whole show. I've seen it. But yeah, it's kind of funny. She's like, knock it off. And he did.
It's funny watching them back to back, because it seems like it's like 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. Take your hands off her, David. David, take your hand. She can hold the mic, David. David can take your hand.
Also, keep in mind, Lucille Ball is a comedy actress. When people laughed at it the first time, she repeated it. So she got her point across, and she was getting her laugh. 2 for 1.
One of the last questions I want to ask, just because there's been so many rumors of it over the years, and I'm hoping you can dispel this for me, because I've seen comedy shows make fun of it. I've seen shows like Family Guy and others try to point this out. Desi wasn't a violent man, was he? I like to believe not, but
No. I'm only pausing, not because I don't know the answer, because I want to use the right words.
Yeah, I understand that.
If one chose to go through what they call the newspaper morgues on every article ever written about Mr. Arnaz, you might find him hearing someone on his ranch who he thinks is trying to break in and is taking his gun out and hitting a warning shot. Not hitting a person, just bang, like, get the hell away from me. If one wanted to believe that was his nature, one would be very, very wrong. A loving human being. I've never heard of him being violent. There are some books out there that have been written about the Arnazes and their personal lives. They infer it, and they infer it because it sells books. I do not believe it to be true.
Yeah, I never wanted to believe that myself personally.
That explanation makes me very happy.
I know the family very well. I am friends with Lucy and Desi Jr. I know their children. I mean, could a kid have gotten a slap somewhere in their childhood? I mean, yeah, maybe, but someone losing. No, did Desi have a temper? Yeah, Desi had a temper. So did Miss Ball.
No, yeah, he's Cuban.
No, it's just his person.
He's human. He's human.
That's human, not Cuban. Let's not paint with broad ethnic brushes here. Mr. Arnaz had a temper. Miss Ball had a temper. But violent? No.
Yeah, I've never liked the rumors where he was portrayed that way, because I always thought to myself, and this kind of brings back to the Kennedy Center, the message that he left behind in his passing. Those words from him and her reaction, they don't coincide with a man who was violent towards his loved ones.
To the best of my knowledge, without revealing anything I shouldn't, Mr. Arnaz loved Miss Ball. He loved his children. He loved his mother. He loved his grandchildren that he got to meet before he died. He loved his work. He loved the American public. And he loved Cuba and missed Cuba terribly his whole life. He never got over that loss, I don't believe. But these books that are written, or if you look on YouTube, these videos, Desi Arnaz's secret 30-year double life. And then there's Lucille Ball's and Vivian Vance's and William Frawley's. And I've lost count how many times YouTube has told us that Desi Arnaz Jr. is secretly dead. People will say and post anything to get you to click or buy or spend money. They don't care. They have no ethics and no morals. I do. I have turned down $500,000 to write what I know. And I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to take the money, because I love these people who have been absolutely wonderful to me. And I have to believe that they've been absolutely wonderful to me. They're absolutely wonderful people, because who the hell am I? You know, I wasn't part of the family. I didn't grow up with them. I'm not Cuban. And they treat me so well. So I have to assume they treat everybody well. And the people who complain are people who have an axe to grind, and they're not telling the truth.
I appreciate the way you answer the questions, and with the respect and consideration towards the family and their legacy and everything. So,
and love.
I have
and the love for the family.
One more question.
You can hear the love from you.
Thank you. Well, it's sincere.
I have one more question for you, and it absolutely has nothing to do with Lucy or Desi. This is just a curiosity one to know if this is true and if you have a story behind it. Were you really witness to the assassination of John Lennon?
Yes, I was.
Can you elaborate on that moment? Like that's
sure,
history.
Sure.
That's a rough moment, and
yeah,
understandably,
give me just a second. I got to switch gears here, because this is now personal to me, as opposed to my reporting about others.
Were you guys friends?
No, not at all. No. I had a date. I was living on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and I had a date with a girlfriend, believe it or not, who lived on 72nd Street, across from the Dakota building where John and Yoko lived, and then halfway down the block. There was a restaurant in her lobby called Noodles, and we were going to have like a 10:30, 11 o'clock late supper together. Normally, I would have just walked down. I was young, very young, in great shape, and I would just have walked to her house. It was cold that night, and I just didn't want to walk for miles in the cold. So I took the subway, the A train downtown, which lets you off at Central Park West and 72nd Street. That is where the Dakota apartment building is. By happenstance, I should have just walked across the street to her side of the street, but the light was against me and there were cars. And I thought, all right, you know what? I'll walk down 72nd and I'll hop over halfway down. I'll just, jaywalking in New York, at least back then, everybody did it. It was not a big deal. The Dakota apartment building in those days, there was an archway and a little bit of a driveway. There was no front door on 72nd Street. Inside was a little bit of a park area. I mean, Ersatz Park. Benches and trees and boxes. And they strung little tea lights around at night. And you took a dog leg to the left, and that's where the front door and the doorman was. I am walking down 72nd Street. My foot gets into the archway, and bang, bang, bang. And there is Mark Chapman like this. There's a body face down, obviously dead immediately. I saw it. Now, I'm going to say these things to you. Understand that what happened was much faster. I saw it. The body was in the dark. I could make it out. I couldn't see who or what it was, other than I thought it was a man. I did not know Yoko was further back in the darkness, cowering. I didn't see that. I couldn't see it. It was no lights back there. Chapman, however, was underneath one of those tea lights. I saw him perfectly. And then he saw me. And from that, it became that at me. And I ran like the wind. Now, everything I just described happened in 3 seconds. Only in the moment, it felt like 10 minutes. Because I had decisions to make. What do I do? Do I help this person? What do you do? When the gun got pointed at me, I ran. Against traffic, up the elevator to Phyllis's apartment. Hi, Phyllis. I had a key to the door. I let myself in. She was taking a bath. I turned the TV on. I'm shaking. She happened to have her television set to Channel 9, WOR in New York in those days. It just so happens that WOR was the first television station to come on with the news. That's how I found out what I saw was who I saw. Now what do I do? Oh, fuck. Sorry.
Always say fuck all the time. You're fine.
Oh, fuck. I just saw John Lennon get murdered. Now what? I went into the bathroom. She was bathing. I sat on my toilet with the seat down, shook. She tried to talk me down from freaking out. And we decided I should keep my mouth shut. Don't get involved. There's nothing you can do. It's already over. Save yourself, from hurt. And then we did go to dinner. But for years and years, I couldn't sleep. The trauma of it and the guilt that I was a coward, that I didn't try to help, that I didn't call the police, that I didn't offer my services, because I could easily identify him. He was right under the light. Bless his heart. Sean Lennon, several years ago, reached out to me because he'd heard the story. I didn't talk about it for decades to anybody. I couldn't tell the story and not fall apart. And I don't like crying in public. Somebody found out and asked, and it's like, all right, I need to start talking about it to somebody. Might as well be online or on television, I think it was. But Sean heard about it, reached out to me. He said, Geoffrey, my father was dead instantly. There was nothing you could do about it. Mark Chapman wanted to get caught. He didn't run away. He just waited for the police to come. There was another witness, the doorman. He called the police. He identified. Mark admitted to it. There was not like he was going to try and cop a plea or pretend it wasn't him. He wanted the publicity. He said the only thing you would have done by staying was probably have him shoot you too, because you weren't part of his scenario. And there you were. And now the gun is pointed at you. He said you did the right thing. The family is telling you to stop feeling guilty. You did the right thing. We appreciate how you feel, but let go of it. And I am enormously grateful to the Lennon family for that. And it is still, all these years later, not easy for me to talk about. I do it because it's part of my story, it's part of my life, and it's real. But not happily. But I think it's but I think it's healthy for me. That's why I do it. I think it's healthy for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing
to,
that with us.
That,
I know it's not an easy story to tell, but thank you.
All right. It's like I said, I'm a big boy. If I didn't want to talk, I would have said, no, I'm not talking about it. So no, it's healthy for me to do. So I appreciate your asking. And if you ever have me on again, I will talk about anything. But if I don't want to, I'll just tell you I don't want to.
And we totally appreciate
we'd love
that.
to, because I know there's a ton of different topics you could cover, and I would like to have you come back to and talk about the Addams Family.
Oh, sure.
Another great. Oh God, I love the Addams Family.
I did a documentary. I did a documentary about them, and I went to school with Lisa Loring, so I've known her since I'm 7 years old. In fact, I sat on Lurch's shoulders and hung out with seriously, and hung out with Uncle Fester, and I know his grandson. So I have a lot of connections to the Addams Family.
Well, before we let you go, would you like to let everybody know whether they can find you on social media and find your books and stuff?
Sure. Facebook, Geoffrey Mark. For those of you who are watching, just as it's spelled beneath my name here. If you're only listening, Geoffrey Mark. Instagram, Geoffrey Mark Showbiz, all one word. LinkedIn, @Geoffrey Mark. You can buy my books online, or you can reach out to me and buy one directly from me, and I will autograph it to you for the same money, and I get to keep the money that way. I answer questions. If I may plug, I have a talk show, Still Toking With, every Wednesday. That's done live, and my two partners and I do what you do. We have conversations with some of the most interesting people in the world. I also have a weekly podcast, Geoffrey Mark Plays Ella, GPE, where I play the music of Ella Fitzgerald on a theme, and then give you insider stories about how the music was made, and the songs and the composers, and Ella's life at the time the music was made. And we got a new one coming out in about 3 weeks, Geoffrey Mark Live on Broadway, where I will play the music of a person or a show from Broadway and give you insider stories there too. So,
oh wow,
I like broadcasting.
Never would have guessed. Never would have guessed at all.
I've been doing this a long, long time. God bless Gary Owens. Remember Gary Owens from Laugh-In? Gary got me started on radio. Because of Gary, I had my own show on KRLA in Los Angeles. And in one form or another, I've been broadcasting ever since.
That's amazing, because I've always been told I have a face for radio. So maybe that's what I should have done myself.
I was told the same thing, and I'm a handsome son of a gun. So don't take that personally.
Well, Mr. Mark, we are horrible podcasters and do not know how to finish a podcast properly. So we steal from those that do great. And we were both inspired in a lot of ways by Mr. James Lipton from Inside the Actors Studio. And we have since pirated, stolen, and absolutely unequivocally taken from him.
Ask the questions. Go ahead.
What is your favorite word?
Naughty or nice?
Whatever.
Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
What sound or noise do you love?
Applause.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, golly. Anytime someone is mean to someone, whether it's me being mean to or not.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, I think it's a little late for me now. I think I would have been a good school teacher. And
what profession? Keep going.
There's two. And my beloved grandmother worked in a store on the Lower East Side of Manhattan that illegally imported from behind the Iron Curtain crystal and china and artwork. And I used to love going to help her in that store. I would have enjoyed having a store like that.
What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
I would not have made a good doctor. Not because I don't care, but because the blood and guts, not for me.
Creatively, what turns you on?
Creatively. Singing and making people laugh are at the core of my soul.
Creatively, what turns you off?
Untalented people who are trying to be in the public eye because they want to be famous, not because they actually have something to offer.
What is your favorite curse word?
Motherfucker. I'm from Brooklyn.
And my favorite question, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I told you so.